We are in 6 constant mitzvot. We are in the mitzvah review. We finished the first mitzvah. First mitzvah was emunah. And I'm just going to summarize. The article is going to be nice enough in case you missed one class or another. So he summarizes for us what we have supposed to been culling out from this whole thing. It says, in this mitzvah, we learned to differentiate between belief and knowledge of Hashem's existence, and to appreciate how that difference will manifest itself in our daily lives. When we know that Hashem exists, we will never act in a way that contradicts that knowledge. In addition, we have learned that part of Emunah is to realize that Hashem created the world for a purpose, namely to enable us to enjoy the reward of basking in Hashem, in the glory of His divine presence, in a world that has attained perfection. We know that we can take an active role in perfecting the world, and that our reward will be proportionate with the efforts that we expend toward that end. And so you have some practical applications which we already spoke about. One is to talk about emunah. By talking about emunah, we reinforce our knowledge of Hashem's existence. Okay, so it's not enough just to think about it. We're supposed to talk about that. Sacrifice for emunah. When we force ourselves to act in a certain manner because we realize that Hashem is watching over us, our knowledge of His omnipresence becomes stronger. Then number 3, use wisdom to build emunah. We can find proof of God's existence in nature, in the Torah, in history, and in logic. The more we study these proofs, the more we will build our emunah. By the way, this is in opposition to those who say that religion is blind and religion is for robots and it's an opiate for the masses and all these sort of things. Judaism is challenging everybody to look at the world, to see history and everything else. Use logic. Use everything at your disposal, because the more you do that, the more you really look and don't have an agenda when looking, the more you'll reinforce this knowledge of God, and thus you'll act appropriately. And then Shivtei Hashem leneged tamid, which means Hashem is always before us. When we are conscious of Hashem's constant presence in our lives, we make decisions based upon how they will affect our relationship with Him. Among other benefits, this will teach us to shun attention and not seek human recognition for our spiritual accomplishments. Number 6 is talk to Hashem. Aside from the scheduled prayers, we should talk to Hashem on a regular basis, requesting His assistance in every pursuit, from the most spiritual to the most mundane. That's something else, God can, as we learned, God is always there for us. There's nothing that's too small for us to ask God, nothing too great for us to ask God. And finally, bitachon, we can display and build emunah by determining how much hishtadlut, how much effort we must really undertake in our individual circumstances, and the level of emunah, and relying on Hashem for the rest. So again, that's a balancing act. We have to know how much we really believe in Hashem, how much we really trust that Hashem is going to do what we want, or what's good for us, if you will. And depending on how much we really have, will determine about how much effort we have to put into it. So in other words, if I have very little belief in that, if I believe, there's a God out there, I'm sure God cares about me, but God's not going to give me my stuff, my money, so I really have to put a lot of effort into making that money. I become that workaholic. I really have to do something about it, otherwise it's not going to happen. That's what Hashem is telling me. On the other hand, if I have implicit faith and trust that God's going to give it to me, so my effort's going to be will have to be much less. It's a direct correlation. Okay, depending on how much emunah I have will determine how much bitachon I have to put into it. Okay, again, the bitachon being the effort. Next one. So now we go to the next mitzvah, which is not to believe in gods other than Hashem. The mitzvah according to the Mincha de Chinuch is as follows. We are not to believe in gods other than Hashem Himself, as the Torah states, you shall not have other gods in my presence. The Ramban, the Nachmanides, notes that one will never find a scriptural mention of other gods in reference to making idols, because the word other is inappropriate in the context of making gods. Since we did not make the first God, how can we make others? Rather, the Torah prohibits belief in one's heart that other gods exist. So now we go into the mitzvah. It says, don't forget the purpose. Question he asks is, why all the warnings? Idolatry is the sin that is perhaps the most frequently mentioned in the Torah. Considering how common idolatry was in ancient times, it seems reasonable that it would appear frequently in books written for that era. But worship is no longer the quote-unquote in thing. If in the olden days the battle was fought between paganism and belief in Hashem, in our time the struggle is between belief in Hashem and the belief in nothing. What do we call that? Atheism. Right? So that's really the fight today. Nowadays, when we read the repeated warnings not to serve idols, we wonder how they apply to us, but the Torah is timeless. The fact that we no longer have the temptation to serve stones, animals, or the sun and the moon does not mean that the warnings not to serve idols are obsolete. This was just asked to me actually recently, because everybody seems to know the Midrash that the Yetzer Hara for idolatry was wiped out in the first temple period. So if it's been wiped out, so why do we still, what does it matter what they do? Why cannot be able to, why not be able to go to church or anything else? There's no idol worship, no Yetzer Hara for it. Yeah?
What about the Buddhists?
What about the Buddhists?
They pray to cows.
Okay.
So that could be,
why are they praying to cows? Because they say that the spirit was, what do you call it? Reincarnated into it. So they don't know who is, they don't know if they're killing their brother. I mean, if you look into Buddhism or any one of those reincarnation theories, so if I can come back as an animal, a stone, or something else, so I'm going to treat everything in that sort of manner. So it's not so much I believe them to be a god, I just don't know whose soul is in there. Yeah.
But isn't that with Judaism? If reincarnation is actually a thing, if it's actually a real thing, if someone's reincarnated as a cow,
we don't believe that they come back as a.
Or as a.
Well, I'm going to take that back. The Ramchal said normally they come back as a person,
yeah.
But if there's something happens, they could come back as something else.
But,
yeah,
as an animal, as a kosher animal, so that way people can make a blessing.
Maybe it's a trace animal.
Well, it's a trace animal.
It could be a trace animal. Maybe it's
like a work animal. I don't know.
It could be a pig. Maybe because you ate pork. Because you ate pork. The expression in Yiddish was, if you eat pig, you'll be reincarnated as a. If you eat pork, you'll be reincarnated as a pig. Now that's. I don't know if that was to scare the kids. I'm not sure. But that was the statement in Yiddish. I can't say, I don't know the Yiddish. I just know the statement. Okay? But the point is, by the way, we do have a belief in reincarnation. And normally we come back as a human, and it's to make up for whatever we messed up in the previous carnation. And that's it. So the soul can come back. That's the Tuesday night class that we were going through. He talked about that, so if you just go with that. But he also said that you could come back as an inanimate object depending on what's going on there. Yeah.
So what about the big golden Buddhas that they pray to?
The what?
The big golden Buddhas.
I tell you the truth, I'm not an expert with everything that they're... I don't know what the other religions do. But if you're asking, that's a proof that there's idol worship? Is that what you're saying to me? Is that the point of all these questions?
I think so, because that could be a form... Because technically you can't go into a church or a mosque.
No, I'm agreeing for us, I'm agreeing that all those things are idolatry. For one reason or another, they're idolatry. Mostly, they're idolatry because they don't agree with us. Really, they don't agree that the Torah came from Hashem. They don't agree in Hashem. They think that it's either multiple gods or something else. Clearly, it's paganism or it's idolatry. I have no problem saying that. And I've said that time and time and time again. Check out all my shiurim. I've said it. So it's not a problem for me to say that as a Jew. But what we're saying here is we Jews, no longer have this desire. We don't. We look at them and say, they're nuts. Okay? We do. We look at you're praying to cows. Okay, you want to see the reincarnated, you don't know what's going on. You're praying to a cross, you're praying to this, you're bowing down to what do they do? To their prophets. All this, they bow down to saints. We look at that and say, you're nuts. There's nothing there. Why do we say that? Because the Yetzer Hara was taken away. So maybe we'd have to say, and this could maybe answer your question, Mastama, it would be logical to argue that the Yetzer Hara for idolatry only was taken away from Jews. That the non-Jewish world still has this Yetzer Hara, still has this desire to pray to an intermediary, or to see it as a power. We'll get into that whole thing as to why they would do that and what's really behind what's one of the possible theories behind it. But what you'd have to just argue is that the Yetzer Hara was only taken away from us. Okay, that's what you have to say. And then that would explain everybody else's whatever they do, and I were looking at them saying, there's nothing there. Okay?
What of those who wander astray, the Jews who wander astray? They're not anchored, they go exploring Eastern religions and such.
Right. So they explore Eastern religions, but they don't get caught in it. They don't start praying to these things, and
some do.
If they're trying to connect to something. There's clearly Jews are trying to connect. When they find out that they look to Eastern religions normally because they're looking for this spiritual connection or this mysticism, because they usually come from, they could also come from Orthodox, but normally they're coming from non-Orthodox backgrounds, and normally non-Orthodox rabbis don't talk about Kabbalah. Well, maybe they do now because of what's her name? Madonna in the 80s. Maybe they do now. I think everybody knows about Kabbalah at this point. But originally they didn't. So Jews would go away. It would be interesting to know how many of the Jews today, you guys said 15? 16. How many Jews today, 15, 16, 17, 18, and like they used to be, that's when they used to travel, are going to these ashrams? I'd be curious. How many of them are actually looking for that and going? I know they're body piercing. I know they're doing a lot of other things, but I don't see people running to do meditation with the Eastern religions. I don't see that. I don't see it even when they had the book, the Jew and the Buddha, whatever it was called. But I don't see thousands of people doing that. I see some people who may look, and that's fine. But they're not going because they want to avoid a zara. They're going because they want to have that connection, because their life is empty. That's why everybody searches. They feel something's missing. That's all. And if I feel totally complete, I'm not looking for anything. Think about that. I mean, I don't care what it is. If I feel complete, I'm not going to look. You could give me the $1 million if I don't. The $1 million really means something today. But if I have everything I want, so you want to give me something? What's the catch? I'm not interested in that. Leave me alone. If I'm missing something, so that I want it. You understand? That's all that's going on here. So now let's continue. So he says the principle of idolatry that must therefore exist in our times too. Our understanding of the mitzvah of lo hiya Elohim acherim, shall not have other gods, must answer the question, why all the warnings? So he says the first of the 6 constant mitzvot was the positive commandment of emunah, which we defined as being secure knowledge that Hashem exists and that He created the world for a specific purpose, namely to bring it to perfection and to manifest that knowledge in our behavior. That's the whole purpose of creation. Okay. The second of the 6 is the lotasa, a prohibition, namely, Elohim acherim al panai. You shall not serve other gods in my presence. So the chinuch quotes Nachmanides' teachings are that lo hiya, this commandment, does not forbid the manufacture of idols. Rather, it prohibits us from believing in our heart that other gods exist. Now that's something else. People have this, they believe in a lot of things. So now I have to exercise that belief of other gods out of your system, or helping gods, if you will. Okay. We will learn that the third of the constant mitzvot is Yichud Hashem, the belief that Hashem is the one and only God. How does this second commandment, Lo Yihiyah, there should be no other gods, which prohibits belief in other powers, differ from the Yichud Hashem? And he says, although one is a positive commandment and the other one is a negative, if they require the belief in the same exact principle, they could not qualify as two separate mitzvot out of the 6 constant mitzvot. So it makes sense that there's two things going on. So the chinuch alludes to the difference in his primary example of the belief that would be forbidden by Lohiyah. He says, if a person accepts one of the creations upon himself as a god, even if he believes that Hashem rules over that being and his power, he transgressed the commandment of there should be no other gods before you. Okay, so I accept that God is the all-powerful God, but I think that he has some helpers. Let's call them malachim. Let's call them the sun, the moon, the stars. Let's call them the different powers, or as the Ramchal is calling the different hashpaot. Think about it. If I can harness the power that we learn about on Tuesday nights. If I could harness that by saying a few names of gods here, a few names of God here and there, or somehow tapping into the malachim, and I make that happen, well, what's going to happen? I don't need God anymore per se. I know God's running the system, but now I don't have to go to the big guy. I can go to the underlings and just say what I have to say. Yeah.
You're not asking, you're commanding.
I'm utilizing.
Right.
But that's the concept of don't put other gods in front of Hashem.
Well, would that be, because down here we're looking up and we're saying, well, God's way too high, but he has intermediaries, so we'll pray to them and then their message will go to God. But if you're up, if you can somehow manipulate the system, then you're not looking up at the angels per se and then trusting that they'll go to God. But you're up above, and you're telling the angels do these actions. You're not asking them to bring any message to God. You're just using.
You're not asking to. You're
not asking God to give the malachim to do these things. You're telling the malachim to do things.
Right. So therefore, when I'm telling the malachim to do things, then I may want to give them some homage. It's like the manager of the store. He's not the boss. So I go to the manager and I praise the manager. And I give a korban, I give a gift to the manager. And I say, okay, just you and me, man. Don't get the boss involved. We don't need to get the boss involved right now. So if the manager, I'm dealing with earthly people. Right. So the manager, depending on how much he's desirous of that gift, will give in. Regardless, I'm going to get the job done. So I am putting somebody in front of God. Right. That's all. That's what the commandment is. That's what he's saying. So Yichud Hashem, on the other hand, saying there's only one unity, requires us to believe that Hashem is the only deity and that he has no partners or competition that might be considered to be his equal. Lohiyah prohibits us from placing our faith in any of Hashem's creations, even if we recognize that they and the power they wield are merely servants of his. Thus, a belief that would acknowledge that Hashem is the only one, even though he grants a degree of power to his quote-unquote servants, would not be in violation of Yichud Hashem, but would be in violation of Lo Yihiyah. There should be no other gods before you. So the Chinuch seems to consider belief in subservient powers the quintessential form of Lo Yihiyah. There should be no gods before you, as evidenced by his mention of it as a primary example of this prohibition. Perhaps there's an art scroll. Perhaps he based his opinion on Maimonides, the Rambam's description of how idol worship began. The Rambam writes that in the days of Enosh, Adam HaRishon's grandson, so Adam had Shet. Let's go in order. Shet had Enosh. Okay, it's my grandfather. My grandfather was created by God. Think about that. Okay. Now watch what happens. And in that generation, humanity erred grievously. They were so awed by the system of stars and galaxies through which Hashem conducts the world that they came to the conclusion that Hashem wants us to praise, glorify, and honor those systems, just as the king of flesh and blood wants his subjects to honor his ministers. By the way, I want you to think about this. Let's go to the school model. You have a principal of the school, and he has teachers. Wow, that was a prejudiced statement. The principal has teachers under the principal. Principal can be male or female. I decided he's male. Okay, it's coming from my chauvinistic background. Wow. Okay. Nonetheless, the principal has a staff. It doesn't matter if it's a teacher, by the way, secular or religious, or the janitor. When the students come in, the principal expects the students to respect the entire staff. So if you have a janitor, you don't call the janitor by the first name. Hey, Jim, come on over here. Paul, Chris, whatever you want to call him. It's Mr. whatever. Okay? For the teachers, it's either Rabbi, Rebbitzin, Miss, Mrs., whatever the title is going to be. Again, you're not going to call it, hey, Rivka. It's not respectable to do that. That's what the principal is expecting. Okay? So the same way as Hashem, this was the rationale. If a teacher or if a principal wants you to treat his staff properly and show respect, because ultimately they're showing respect to the principal. So Kol v'chomer, Hashem, who has all these servants that he created that are running systems, that are in charge of systems, although they have to report back to God. Certainly they can't do anything without God, but it would seem that we should also show them respect and worship them in some manner, calling them Mr. and Mrs., if you will. Okay, that's where we're going. In other words, the original idol worshippers did not deny that Hashem created the world and everything therein. On the contrary, they were sure that he was a creator. Rather, they erred in thinking that Hashem wanted them to honor the systems to which he accorded great glory. Their next...
Is this the thing like not having foresight?
Say again, please?
Is this the thing for not having foresight?
Why is there no foresight here?
Because they allowed that breaking the system, so then it created the actual idol worship, which they denied God, had the rocks and stuff.
And nothing, but that will come. That will come.
Right.
So that's the first chink in the armor, if you will.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
they didn't realize that by doing this.
This is fine, but they didn't. They said this is fine, but they also didn't have any foresight as to
If we do this.
So in other words, they didn't see the outcome of their actions. Yep, that's clear. Yes. I don't think most of us do see the outcomes of our. I don't think, even though it says, and I always like to point this out in Pirkei Avot, it says that one of the ways of is to see the outcome of my actions. I don't think most people think about that. I don't think, even if they do, they're more checker players than chess players. A chess player thinks maybe 30 moves ahead, a good one, how many moves they can move, and the checker player is maybe 2-3 ahead. That's about it. So it's not much more, at least not from what I've ever seen. Yeah.
But this would just be a good example of
not seeing the future. Correct. Right. So the next step, writes Rambam, was to build temples for the stars and begin sacrificing to them while singing their praises and bowing down to them. And again, they did so with a wholehearted intention of fulfilling Hashem's will. All forms of idolatry, which the Rambam brands as evil, stemmed from this era, not from the denial of Hashem having created the world and the gods that people were serving. Perhaps this is why this Chinuch writes that the primary intention of Lo Yeh, again, do not serve other gods, is not to prohibit denial of Hashem's existence, but to prohibit us from serving idols, even if we realize that they are subservient to Him. Okay? So now, programming life. So it says, although the original idol worshippers served the stars in order to fulfill Hashem's will, as the generations progressed, ulterior motives, here's part 2 of this, began to replace altruistic ones. Okay, so You said they didn't see the outcome of their actions. It's clear they didn't, but they also didn't think of one more effect, namely ego. What do I want? Remember, what's my purpose in life? If I asked you what's your purpose in life, your automatic answer should be to help God perfect this world so that I can bask in the glory and the splendor of the divine Shekhinah. That's the Jewish answer, okay? That's what we should be answering. Ask most people, educated, religious Jews, forget the rest, I'll put everybody to the side at that point, ask them, what's the purpose of life? They'll say, to follow mitzvot. It's not the purpose. Mitzvot want to get us to there, but that's not the purpose. Okay? They'll say, follow the Torah. No. Love God. No. It's not the purpose. Okay? There's a purpose here. And what happens is we forget that purpose because we don't think about that purpose. I challenge most, again, ask most people, what's the purpose of life? You study the Ramchal, which is where we're getting this from, really. And like I said right here, and he says it very clearly. The purpose is to bring perfection, and he created the world and the world for a specific purpose, and to bring perfection, and that's it. So, and we work with that, and we bask in Hashem's divine Shekhinah. It's a simple purpose, really. Okay. So now what happens is we replace that. And now we have we replace the altruistic ones, and we replace it with the ulterior ones. In those early years, with Adam Arishon still alive to guide them, people knew how the various systems that Hashem instilled into nature operated. They were awestruck by the systems and worshipped them, but they also sought to manipulate the systems to serve themselves, and they knew secrets that enabled them to do so. Like we were discussing again on Tuesday night, they knew there was people who knew how to do that. So we assume that idol worship was futile and that idolaters must have been backward and foolish, while it's true that idols could not function exclusive of Hashem, for they received their power from Him. Unfortunately, idol worship worked. It's a major line he's saying here. Yeah.
So did the idol worship in in the Judges' time, like Gideon, when they were worshiping idols, was that just already people had forgotten what to say by then, or was it still working?
It worked.
Oh.
We're going to see that. Idols were able to accomplish things that people wanted them to accomplish. King Shlomo wrote, "Gam et zeh l'um et zeh aseh Elokim." God has made the one as well as the other. Hashem created the world with forces of good and parallel forces of evil. There are holy ways to cause miracles, and there are equally powerful forces of evil that can cause miracles. Those familiar with the secrets of black magic were able to program the world to behave in the manner of their choice. So again, I just have to know how to program this thing. It's not hard. If I know the secret, then I can go with it. It's like if you watch David Copperfield. I love picking on David Copperfield. One of the best magicians out there as far as I'm concerned. Okay? But you see what he's doing and you're in awe. How did he do that? Then you find out the trick and you say, oh, that was cheap. Okay, fine. Once I know how to do it, and I can actually do it myself, all the mystery is gone. But once I don't know, it's great to watch.
It's like finding out the password to the terminal.
Password to the what?
Like,
All right, if you find it right.
you can
Right,
get
if you-
to the terminal.
Right, okay. So when idol worship became popular, people attached the secrets of black magic to their idols and programmed them to bring rain, to make the sun shine, and to make things grow. They used the idols to gain success. Again, I went from my altruistic things, so I'm trying to serve God, to, oh, I can make money from this. Now I'm really not looking at what's going to happen. I'm not seeing anything as far as down the road. I'm not looking for, although some people did always want to know what's going to happen in the future, but this is what they're really using it for. The secrets that fueled idolatry were transmitted from one generation to the next until Avram Avinu began to preach against it. Terach, Avram Avinu's father, had an idol store. A well-known midrash relates that when Avram Avinu was a small child, Terach asked him to mind the store for a while. And when he came back, all the idols were broken, except for the largest one. Most people know this, right? You all know this one? Good. So Avram Avinu explained that a woman had brought food to sacrifice to the idols, and the largest one wanted all of it for himself, so he destroyed the others. An idol can't destroy other idols, countered Terach. They can't move on their own. So why do you all worship them? Asked Abraham. Yeah?
This is sort of,
Sorry?
it's sort of a humorous question, I guess.
Okay.
Why would you bring an offering to an idol that you haven't yet bought?
Oh, good caution. You can't ask a question on the story that never happened.
Oh, it's a lie.
Okay.
I know, but that's exactly what the father. Not they can't move. Is why didn't she bring an offering to the idols? Wait, did he?
She wanted to try it out.
Oh, wait.
When you go to a car place, you don't buy the car, you try it out first. So I want to try out if the idol works. Does it take my food? I can answer that, not a problem.
So wait, if there was black magic in it, certainly, then it would.
I have to see if I can program it.
Oh, so then it wouldn't matter on the food; it would matter on what you said.
Whatever.
What was it used?
So he's saying of food. They had to bring something to the thing. Remember, it's a representation, whatever. It's not, they just made it. So it's a representation. Like, nobody's that stupid to believe that a microphone is a god.
Yeah.
Okay, nobody's that stupid. But if I have power with it, if I imbue it with power, then it can get onto this computer and hook it up with the wires, and it can actually broadcast to the world. If I was live streaming, do you realize how far I could be reaching? According to YouTube statistics, people are listening to me in South America. I don't know why. Thank God. Keep listening, guys. Okay? But I have people as far as in Czechoslovakia. I think somebody I don't know how they understand my English. People here can understand my English, so I don't know how they're doing it. But nonetheless, you have people all over the world, literally, some people in Israel supposedly, watching this. All because I'm hooking up these things. That's mamash magic. That's power in my hands. I can say what I want. The people are listening to me. It's better than Donald Trump. He makes stupid statements. I make stupid statements. Who cares? But he gets a lot of press. Apparently, I do too. So fine. But this is what they would be considering avodah zarah. So I give something to the gods. I give something to Google. That's all. So that's really what's going on. So now he has a different story. He has a different question now. He says, this is a great story to tell little children, but one that is hard to understand because Terach was a rational individual. Why did he worship objects if he realized that they were powerless? Why didn't he accept Avram's argument? Avram was not arguing that idolatry didn't work. It did work. And that's why people worshipped idols. Avram was pointing out that idols cannot do anything on their own. They cannot make decisions. They cannot cause rain to come, just as they cannot fight with other idols.
So at this stage, people were now worshiping the tool. It's like taking a
Yes.
hammer and putting it on a pedestal.
Yes.
Instead of using it to build.
Correct. No, they're using it to build also. They're using it to build and they're worshiping it. Sorry?
Then it's like using a hammer and you build it and you're like, oh, this is a glorious hammer, and you set it up and you worship it, and then you take it down.
Yeah, but I want you to know something. There's a problem in the world today with texting. Texting? Not texting. I don't know what it is. I forget what it is, but it's social media. The kids are from kids. I'm talking about religious kids. They cannot disconnect. Even on Shabbos, they cannot disconnect. Physically, they could turn it off, no question.
Right.
But they argue that they need to be connected. How can they not be connected? And they break Shabbos. They're breaking Shabbos. Okay, so they tried to come up with a Shabbos app. That's when the Shabbos app was coming out. Shabbos app, Shabbos is, Shabbos. They're connected to technology so much. Again, is it thousands of people? No, I don't think it's thousands of people. I don't think it's millions of people. I think the news media made something out of it, or the internet made something out of it. I don't think it's such a pressing issue. I'm sorry, I just don't. I think you're lucky if you have 10,000. I think that's even too much. but 10,000 who are so connected that they can't disconnect. And it's all teenagers. That's what they're claiming too. So fine, it's another assault on the whole social networking. Okay, fine, do what you want. But my point is, if there is a child who can't disconnect, or an adult who can't disconnect, or who feels disconnected for the 25 hours or the 48 hours, or sometimes 72 hours that we have to disconnect, I can't help you. God, that's if you really need to be connected, so you're part of your avodah zarah. That isn't avodah zarah. That's no different than what we're talking about here. It's a tool that I'm worshiping, I'm looking at. It has to be right. In the old days, again, you guys don't have you don't have a TV, right?
No, what's it called? No cable TV.
We have a TV.
You have a TV? Fine. So in the old days, when they had TV, it was in the living room in a prominent place. It wasn't hidden away. It was in a prominent place. And we would all sit around the TV and watch the stupidity. Or in even the earlier days, long before I was a child, long before I was thought of it by my mother, okay, they used to sit around a box called a radio. That's you? Okay. And they would look at the radio. What are you looking at? But they would concentrate. Okay. Again, if I would show you pictures, you would think they're praying to this thing. They all come together and they look at it. And it's booming out voices. Okay. So every generation has something that they're connected to. So that's what you're really looking at. Again, nobody thought the radio was a god, but it did give information. Nobody thinks the TV is a god, but it gives information. Nobody thinks that Siri or Google really knows everything, but they'll still ask because they're too lazy to type. They're too lazy to look up things in the encyclopedia if they remember what an encyclopedia looks like. People don't know how to do research anymore, except you really go to college and learn how to do it. And nobody knows how to spell because you don't have to, because the computer will correct or self-correct or whatever. That's why people think through is spelled Thru.
Really?
Yeah.
Which
Drive-through. You ever saw it?
no, I've seen drive through. I thought it was.
Yeah, but why would you write? Why would
Room is tough.
Okay, I'm just saying. People actually believe that a lot of this stuff is true, and so you get lost in all this. But that's where we're going with those. Okay, so you have to just remember that. So, let's continue. He said, a human can program them to provide rain by tapping into secrets that Hashem created and sustains, but without programming, they are powerless. A God should not need programming, argued Avraham. God must be the source of truth, not something that can be manipulated to provide success. So that was his argument to his father. Not that the father really believed that the stone he just carved was a god. He didn't believe that, but he knew that we could program it using the different names or whatever the programming was to get the job done. So if I want to buy the rain god, so it's programmed, I follow directions, then I get my rain. You understand? That's really what's going on. So it worked. The point is it worked. And now if it works, and I want to think about this, medicine works if you believe it works. I know you're going to disagree with me. You always disagree with me. But it doesn't work if you don't believe it works. Or it won't work as well. It won't. You have a headache, take a couple of aspirins. 5 minutes later, you don't have the headache anymore. It doesn't work. Aspirins don't work that fast, I'm sorry. But you believe they did, so it works. I could give you a placebo, and it'll just work just as well. That we've proven 1,000 times over. So it's not the drug as much as your mind. So if I believe something, I'm not saying that people shouldn't take medication. Don't take it out of context here. But if you need to take medication, the doctor's prescribing, by all means follow the doctor's orders here. I'm not arguing that. But what I'm saying is our mind is extremely powerful. And therefore, if I believe that it works, it will work. Even when it doesn't work. It still works for us. So it's a crazy thing. It still works. So we put a lot of faith into that, which is why when we go to a doctor, we know something's wrong. We go to the doctor, and whatever the doctor says, we say, okay, it must be true. Most people don't go for third and fourth opinions. They were satisfied that the doctor said, this is what's wrong with you. Okay, good. Yeah.
And yet, for some reason, when people put in their prayers and they don't get what they want, then they think the system's broken. But if it's
Correct, because again, you're right. When people put in prayers and they don't get what they want, they say God didn't listen.
Right.
But that's because they don't understand prayer,
right,
which is why they have to listen to my crash course on prayer found on YouTube. That's right. She pops out. People should listen to it. But God is not, I've said it 1,000 times, God is not a candy machine. God doesn't, you just don't put it in, it comes out. Again, I have to, sorry?
It is, but it's a faulty candy machine.
No, it's not God, you have to do your work. To feel it isn't a vote, it's a service. It's a lot of work to get that level where I'm talking to God, and that's part one, by the way, my emunah, knowing that everything I do, everything that happens to me is for the good. That's emunah. And that's where I have to really believe that. That's the first constant mitzvah I have. So, and people don't have that. They got, the old expression is, God, I haven't talked to you for, you know how long it's been. I don't even know you exist. But if you exist, I need this, or this person needs that, and they believe in you, so can you get the job done? What kind of prayer is that? First of all, that's even worse than a candy machine. I don't have $1, but I'm going to put it in, I'm going to just hit the button, and if it comes out, so then I know that there's a God. You're an idiot. I can't help you. Okay? You have to put the money in at least. You have to believe in the system. If you don't believe in the system, again, the mind is very strong that way. If I don't believe in the system, it's not going to work. And on top of that, Hashem is out looking for it. And I know you exist. If you do exist, then prove it to me. Hashem's not interested in that either. I gave you enough information already. Now you have to just trust it. If you don't trust it, that's what are you coming to me for? Yeah.
And that's sort of be like, if you don't believe in miracles, you won't see miracles.
Correct.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, you see miracles every day.
Yeah, I know that's.
Right, but if I don't believe there's a miracle, then I will explain everything, and that which I can't explain today will be explained later. I will allow it to be explained later. I will say no problem. Science will ultimately explain it. Just because science explains something doesn't mean it's not a miracle. We were talking about last Shabbos that they made. If you look at the sculpture of how they made the ark, so the golden cherubim were with the wings hanging, right? So it's like this. Well, gold is very malleable, so it's sort of sunk, and it doesn't fall. Why not? It's a miracle that it's being held up all the time. There was nothing under it. Again, gold will just go like that. So, unless something's holding it up. So now, our brief overview of idol worship should leave us with a question. Granted, we should not be serving gods for our own purposes, but what's evil about it? If those who worshipped idols realized that Hashem created them and enabled them to work, why does the Rambam label them evil? Imagine living in Avram's time in an area suffering from drought, and knowing that by bowing down to the right stone, on the right day, in the right way, you would be likely to cause rain to fall. Hey, let me just finish. If you realize that Hashem created the stone's ability to provide you with rain, why would you be considered for programming the stone to give you the rain? Yeah, what's the question?
So,
This is an if question, by the way.
right, so it's bad when you worship it.
What is that?
It's bad when you worship it, right? When you take it and you worship it. But if it was just a tool and we only saw it as a tool, would it be bad? Because then we're just using this knowledge that we have that we.
He's saying that. He's saying that's bad.
Okay.
He is saying that's bad, yes.
We're just using it. Okay.
And he's going to give you the answer. The answer to this question lies in the deeper definition of the mitzvah of lo tihiyah, that you shouldn't have these false gods be in front of you, and an understanding of how it relates to the first mitzvah, namely emunah. According to our definition of emunah, one must believe that there is a purpose to creation and seek to participate in bringing that purpose to fruition. When we focus our attention on causing rain to fall or grain to grow, we divert our attention from that goal. That's what's really happening. This is not to suggest that we can survive without rain and livelihood, but we should see these necessities as a means to an end and not as an end unto themselves, viewing the necessities of life as an end instead of a means will lead to grave errors. If financial success is a goal, why not utilize any means that can help in its attainment? Why not advance our monetary goals by using the powers of impurity? If that's my goal, I knew a person who said to me when I was single, he was talking to me and his daughter actually, he said to us, if your entire goal is to get married, why aren't you investing all your money in that? Going out on dates, going on this, to invest in all those things, spend money every way you can. I mean, if that's your real goal, then you should be investing in that and not just doing it as a part-time basis. Okay, so what's the goal? So if we internalize the lessons of Amunah and Lo Yihiyeh and consider growing closer to Hashem through self-perfection as our only goal, we have no use for the systems that involve no growth. And we certainly do not engage in activities that will distance us from Him. Again, if I know how to use a tool, and I use a tool, and I see that as the end, I've distanced myself from God. I've lost the goal. I've lost my way. That's not good. Don't have any gods before you. I have a goal for you. I have a mission for you. Just follow that. The difference between growth-based efforts and result-based efforts is clear in the Jewish approach to receiving rainfall, which focuses almost exclusively on prayer. On Shmini Atzeret, we recite a prayer praising Hashem as the giver of rain, and during the winter we ask for rain 3 times a day in the Shemona Esrei. Prayer, unlike bowing to a stone, is a way of forging a close personal relationship with Hashem, which is part and parcel of the purpose of the world. In fact, the Torah states that rain did not fall after creation until man prayed for it, as it says, "V'chol siach hasadeh terem yiyeh ba'aretz, v'chol esav hasadeh terem yitzvach, ki lo yimter Hashem Elokim al aretz, v'adam ayin la'avod et adamah," which means that all the trees of the field were not yet on the earth, and all the herb of the field had not yet sprouted, for Hashem had not sent rain upon the earth, and there was no man to work the soil. Rashi explains that God was waiting for man to recognize the need for rain and to turn to his Creator in prayer that rain should fall. Why? Not because rain could not fall without man's prayers, but because man needed the spiritual connection that would be created by turning to God to fulfill his needs. What do we do today? Okay. What do we do today when we need water? We turn the hose on. We're not praying to God. So we just turn the hose on. So that, but again, if I'm just doing it because I want the water or the sprinklers, if I just do it for that and I don't recognize it come from God, and I'm praying to God for that, or the money to pay for this stuff, so then I'm missing the point too. So Amunah should cause us to grow closer to Hashem, to rely upon Him and only on Him. As we have seen, we are required to engage in a certain amount of hishtadlut, effort, to provide for ourselves, but when executed properly, hishtadlut does not conflict with our reliance upon Hashem. Lo Yihiyeh requires us to remain focused on our relationship with Hashem and on His purpose for the world, not to abandon them in favor of solutions to our problems that ignore those goals. Idolatry is evil because it causes us to forget Hashem and the purpose of the world. And that's where we'll stop.